For our COBT viewers and listeners, it's Maynard here in Oklahoma City. Ann Bluntzer is with me. I think one of the most fun things we've done at Veriton over the last 6 months is get to know Ann better. She's the new executive director here at the Hamm Institute. We'll talk a little bit more about Hamm and what they're trying to do here. Before Hamm, she was at TCU. She's got a fascinating background, focused historically around geopolitics. She was a foreign service officer in the State Department at one point, but she brings a long history of thinking about energy in a global context to this new role. And it's an exciting new role. She's going to put her fingerprints on where Hamm is going from here. But Ann, as I say, it's been so fun getting to know you and talking about energy, and we can't wait to do more this year with you.
We're excited, Maynard. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and coming to Oklahoma City. I'm here to the Hamm Institute, right in the heart of the state. And, you know, I'm a Texan at heart.
But you've crossed the Red River.
I crossed the Red River, and I am now up here in Okie land, and I couldn't be more honored. I've had the really wonderful opportunity to spend time with you over the years in my previous role, trying to really help students, academia, and industry come together to really help solve some of the world's greatest energy challenges. When Mr. Hamm offered the position to me to move a little north and be able to help the Hamm Institute really not only understand what's happening here domestically, but then utilizing that to really push the work out globally to make sure we have energy security around the world. And I'm honored to be here and just really excited to continue our conversations. Every time we visit, we always end up in a place that I never thought we would when we started. Yeah. And I really enjoy that. And it's kind of this dialogue that I hope more people will do and be a part of as we have a new administration moving into DC. And I think there's just a ton of opportunity. I get really excited about it.
It's a fascinating time. And we were talking about it just before we turned on the mics and the camera. Just Monday, I didn't make it to the second cup of coffee before Trudeau is resigning, and it's just a reminder of the world, the geopolitics, and how things can very quickly change. And I think it just seems like at Hamm there's a real connectivity to the national security geopolitics of energy. This is very helpful for all of us to remember.
Yeah, if anyone out there doesn't think energy security and national security are directly correlated and that both have to happen in order to achieve either of those, they can't operate independently. They just can't. And we see that here. Mr. Hamm, obviously, in his storied career in the oil and gas industry and being a big part of why we're even able. Some people would say he is the reason, but I think we can all at least agree on the fact that it's a big part of why we are able to export our natural resources here out of this country to the rest of the world, and why we've seen a growth in energy security, which we all know immediately means everybody's quality of life goes up in the rest of the world. Doesn't mean it's not perfect. There's a lot of turmoil all over right now. I mean, you look at longstanding prime minister, as you mentioned, all of that changed overnight. And who knows what will happen in the next 30 minutes. We are spending a lot of time right now in Asia and really trying to have a conversation about each of our economies can support each other. And there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of angst around China and Russia and what that means for their security and their quality of life. And so that's what we're focused on here, 100%. That is where all our eggs are in that basket right now.
Do you think we're entering a period of energy alliances? Like you're a geopolitical expert, so we've lived through the Cold War was a period of military alliances, sort of NATO, Warsaw Pact. It's almost like, to your point, energy is clearly directly connected to national security. So you kind of have to have an energy alliance if you're going to have a security alliance. Like, do you feel the world moving into energy blocks around energy? Like, who's friends with America? We get their energy. Who's not friends with? Like, it's amorphous there. I'm throwing that out, but It feels like we might be going that way.
I think so. I think that's okay. I think that can be a good thing. It will cause the more irresponsible players out in the world to shift and take notice, right? I think that's probably a big piece of the Trump administration's approach is going to be that. I mean, who knows how things will play out. But I think that's important because it forces the hand of those that can produce responsibly, can move the product in a way that's efficient and environmentally sustainable. And when you can do that and you are pushing some of those players to have to stop and take notice, okay, we are going to choose to buy, this product specifically from these countries that we think will align geopolitically and be able to support us. I think we're seeing that happen naturally, just based off of world events in the Middle East and in Russia, and what we see happening in Asia and the pressure of China on some of our biggest allies, Japan and South Korea, our two biggest allies. And we've really got to, I think, figure out, what that means for us and how do we get more energy to that part of the world where they can then become less reliant on the type of markets and the type of governments that are not going to be supportive of a free market and a democratic society.
I was thinking you were just in Asia in a number of spots. I think the governor of Oklahoma, a bit of a delegation, talking to a number of countries and companies about energy policy and needs in Asia. Like, what are some takeaways from that trip, and what would maybe surprise us about what's being talked about in Asia that we don't hear about as much?
It was a fantastic trip. I've been in Asia multiple times this fall. We have some partners there that we like to spend time with. We're really trying to understand what's driving the market there and what are the things that part of the world is worried about, and how do we counter influence some of that. And we believe deeply that is oil and gas. We'll say that with wave a flag at the top of the mountain about it. The more natural gas that we can get to that part of the world, it is the transition fuel that they need to really bridge the gap of their growing demand and to lessen the reliance on the countries that we've already been talking about. When I think of the latest trip, which was with Oklahoma Governor Stitt, and took a very thoughtful delegation over to Taiwan, Korea, and Japan. And it was folks from the Oklahoma Commerce Department. It was our energy secretary. It was industry leaders here in Oklahoma from several of the leading companies here. And then, of course, the education academia arm, which was me in the Hamm Institute. And watching Governor Stitt, I think, in those meetings where we were meeting with the ministries of energy, we were meeting with their leading economists, we were meeting with their industry representatives, and having some hard conversations. They're nervous, and they have a reason to be, right?
I think you said that when we talked before, the tariff mindset is really agitating them.
Yeah, what does that mean for them, right?
And a number of those organizations have some investments which are tied to the IRA or tied to these types of things as well.
Largest foreign investment dollars to the United States comes from Japan. I'll say that again. I think it's really important to hear. The largest amount of foreign investment dollars of any country in the world to the U.S. is from Japan. And so we've got to be thoughtful about that. And I have full faith, I really do, that our current administration, our future administration in a week, 6 days from today, and probably when folks are hearing that, it will have just happened. But I think it is really critical to think about, what does that mean? How can we both win in this scenario, right? What does that look like? And Governor Stitt in those rooms did an excellent job of really talking about and being open. What can we do? You tell us how we can help.
What could the governor, do you have anything, like if I'm the Japanese Minister of Energy and I say, okay, Governor, please do the following. Are there specific things like that?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of great, honest dialogue about this, specifically really starting to talk about what it means when a country says, okay, we are going to commit to buying more U.S. oil and gas. And we're not necessarily going to buy it from what's the most convenient, right? Or so when these contracts start to expire and countries have more opportunity to really choose and not be locked in based off of agreements that were made decades ago. And we're able to provide it cheaper and a cleaner product by far than what they're currently experiencing, then that's a win. And it's opening that up so that we can talk about it and what does that look like for them to rely more heavily on Australia, on US, on the folks that are on the same page in the way that the world needs to move to make it more secure and wealthy, right? So that everybody has a chance to earn more and have a higher quality of life. And those conversations were excellent. I mean, there were some very basic ideas around exchanging, universities and students and businesses and trying to get more, companies in those regions to invest more even in the U.S. than they currently are, to keep those conversations healthy. They like our regulatory environment moving into this administration. They like our tax base. I mean, we have a lot to offer in many of the states in this country right now that's better than doing business even in their own home countries.
What about Taiwan? Like, what is Taiwan seems to come in and out of the news based on like Chinese naval movements or something like it. It's periodically super stressed and then we get stressed about something else. Like, what's the mood there and what are they thinking about and wondering about?
It's the same. It's the same as in Japan and Korea. I mean, everyone's worried. It's a highly volatile time in that part of the world and really trying to figure out how do they set themselves up for success to be strong against an influence as big as China and Russia and what that looks like for them. It's the same. It's energy security is a big piece of it, right? How do we make sure we are not reliant? The products we are making, how do we make sure they're going to the good guys and not the bad guys? They have a really impressive manufacturing base there that, needs to be grown and more abundant. So it's a similar conversation.
I was thinking about your background as a foreign service officer. I know you spent some time in Eastern Europe, but just being a part of the State Department and the diplomatic corps, do you find the current landscape to be just sort of dizzying in terms of, there's no unifying themes like the Cold War had. Like it just seems kind of like every country for himself, so to speak. Like, what is your impression of the geopolitical landscape right now? Like, it's really hard to.
I know. I want to hear yours
simplistic.
Too. You're asking all the questions. I want to hear how.
I know, this is why I enjoy it. I'm not on the spot. Only you are on the spot.
I mean, we're coming from a place where we're saying and touting America first. And so why wouldn't we expect, just as citizens, that other countries would do the same, right? And so when we put out there America first, I would hope that other countries would do the same. That will be the best outcome from the America First movement. 100% would say, look at this as an example. How do we put Taiwan first? How do we put Japan first? How do we put Bulgaria first? How do we put Argentina first? How do we help them make themselves first? And we do that by setting the example of here's what happens when you do that, and here's what that means globally, right? It's a basic economic trickle-down effect. It's old school. It's not new. This is something that we know works. The trickle-down effect works. If you get it right here, then it goes to everybody else, and they can emulate that, and then they get to reap those same rewards. And it's a beautiful thing when you see it happen. And we have lots of examples in our lifetime where we've seen this happen.
Is another way to say this, because I was telling you, I spoke with a friend Monday who was talking about this America First language, and it gets, what does that really mean? But is another way to say it is a healthy America is not just good for America, it's good for the world. And if America is going to be healthy, it has to make choices which are in America's interest.
100%. Yeah, I do agree with that. I think that can be interpreted.
Like, why is us being weaker? How would that help?
How would that help anyone?
How would that help anyone?
Yeah, and so I mean, it's very much the hand up, not hand out mentality, and I think we can do a better job of that here. I think the incoming administration is going to be doing things that are that. It's the hand up, right? We're going to show you here's how it's done. And let's figure out how to make sure that you can do those things too, and you're not so reliant, which makes you less vulnerable which makes, I think better for everybody in regard to a geopolitical landscape and feeling secure and not, being a victim of a larger superpower somewhere close in proximity.
So do you think, as you think about your role at Hamm, you've been here 6 months now, I think from my own impression, Hamm has been on everyone's radar as it's the up and coming sort of, it's a new initiative. It's had a heavy focus around American entrepreneurialism and national security around energy. How do you think the Hamm Institute under your leadership, what are the things you'll be focused on in the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I mean, I think our overall goal, which is nice and clear and clean and simple from this institute, is that, energy security is first and foremost. And we know that natural gas is one of the tools that's going to allow the rest of the world to be able to enjoy that. We are certainly, more of everything, right? That's an I think, used phrase, but it is true. You can't say it enough. One thing, you don't have to pit any of these energy sources against each other. They all have a place and where they can make sense and feed this demand that is so critical for the rest of the world. And we see oil and gas as continuing to be a healthy part of that, and to not ever forget the role that it has played in building, wealthy and affluent and healthy nations around the world. It's just a critical piece of it, and it doesn't get enough attention. And it's an important piece of what we will do here at the Institute every day, is to make sure that story is told first and foremost. In a 10-year outlook, what we would love to be doing is working on research that will, number one, feed policy, number two, and that policy here domestically will help energy producers here in the U.S. thrive and be able to produce more for the rest of the world so it's abundant and affordable. And right now, the number one thing is obviously that it's reliable and that you can get it. And almost affordability and abundancy has become, second in importance. But that you have it first and foremost is going to be critical. And that's actually at risk, which is unique. We didn't expect that. We touted our energy independence, a decade ago, and now it's volatile again. And we, a lot of things at play as to why that is. In the short term, what do we do here at the Institute to really help drive this mission of energy security? It's going to be getting in the room where the conversations are happening. And Mr. Hamm and his team in Oklahoma State University has been unbelievable in their ability to pivot and react this fall, not knowing what would happen in November. We had no idea what our administration would look like. Some people hoped for certain things, but we didn't know. And so we were ready. We were in London in September. We were in Korea. We were in Seoul, end of October. We were back over there again, really trying to understand how do we make sure everybody wins in this scenario, depending on how things go in November. Then we have an election. Now we have a little more clarity around what that will mean. What kind of things need to happen. We know what we think here. It's certainly better permitting, more friendly permitting. I mean, it's just been a killer for us. Opening up natural land so you can start to do those things as well. And some of the reserves, you saw what happened in the news a few days ago with Alaska now, and what Biden administration is trying to do here at the 11th hour. It's being in the room to help influence some of that in a way with accurate, honest information so that we are making decisions that are based in a place that grows our economy, which we truly believe, and I know you believe this too, is what helps move societies forward when you have a healthy economy and you're not making emotional decisions on billions and billions of federal dollars. So we want to help drive that in a healthy way forward, and we're excited to do that. I feel very, very optimistic about the future and what that means for energy and prosperity for everybody.
Do you think I was thinking about these debates and the offshore drilling ban that the Biden administration has thrown out. You just think about a debate like that and really sitting down and having a town hall about, okay, well, what would be the cost of doing that? What are the benefits of doing that? What's the probability we might need that acreage in some scenario out in the future that we don't yet understand? Like, there obviously was not that town hall debate around that move, but do you think the energy debate is just fundamentally going to get better like that? Like, we'll just be better cost, benefit, risks, security. Like, we're just going to be we're going to be better energy policy makers. Is that part of your optimism right now?
100%. Yeah, I definitely. I don't want to be...
Because I think we share that. We feel like the discussion is getting better.
It's getting better.
We still have issues, but it's getting better.
It's getting better. I mean, it really is. And so I think...
It's part of our New Year's optimism, too. It's getting better.
I like it. 100%. I don't want to be naive either. I mean, I think there'll be some things that will come down that are heavy-handed. But what that will do, it will force a better dialogue, which we haven't seen in this country in a long time, at least the last 4 years. I think it will force that in some ways. This is what is better for everybody if some of these things shift and change, and we then are forcing that dialogue. Okay, let's really talk about it in a way, because now we have some positive examples. Look what happens when these changes are made. And so sometimes you have to show it. You have to show the example first, and then you're opening up those streams of consciousness that lead to conversation, that hopefully lead to positive change. On the other side of that, I think when these things are happening and you have a soon-to-be president that is talking to everybody. It's fascinating. I mean, he's talking to everybody. He's listening to everybody. And whether you agree or disagree.
You feel that here in a way that the rest of us guess you know that's happening.
Yes. And so I so appreciate when someone's willing to listen to everything and then let that feed their informed decision.
One thing I was thinking, the Hamm Institute is of course associated with Harold's founding it and sponsoring it, and he's of course an oil and gas entrepreneur, world-class entrepreneur. Power is such a big discussion, and the cost of power and where you locate your plant, and AI needs power. Any view on kind of how the Hamm Institute might get involved in the power discussion?
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on this. We're even planning some to continue the conversation in this spirit. We're planning on putting a lot of opportunities coming forth in the spring with some of the relationships that we have in the government along with industry to really have a nuts and bolts conversation around how do we solve the growing power demand and what we will need for the data centers and the AI. It is the hot topic, so we're not ahead of the game necessarily, but we do feel like where we can play an important role is to bring the right people in the room to have that balanced conversation around how do we actually solve this problem now. I sound like a broken record, but I'll continue to say, natural gas will be, especially in the mid-continent area of the United States, it's a no-brainer. We've got to figure out some infrastructure needs. We've got to figure out some regulatory on the power side of it. And everybody's going to have to give a little on this, Maynard. And it's going to be uncomfortable for everybody just a little because the power, the electricity side and the markets are going to have to be more flexible than they've been. We've got to get manufacturing for these natural gas-fired turbines for this to even work, right? Our infrastructure, our grid infrastructure is not set up to support this right now. So we're going to have some behind-the-meter solutions. Some states have been doing that well. We need every state to be able and willing to do that, right? So we've got manufacturing's got to pick it up. We need electricity and power markets to play ball. We need, honestly, oil and gas producers to be willing to probably take a leap of faith and know that they need to increase production, even though, everyone's going to have to take a little risk is probably the better way to put that.
What do you think about speaking of taking a little risk, the tech companies? We've been talking all week that, Microsoft, I think their CapEx number was something like $45 billion last year. This year it's going to be $80 billion. the tech companies play a huge role because A, they're the customers, but B, they could say natural gas is a winner, and they could be more culturally, if they will speak out in favor of natural gas. I think that would probably be helpful for energy policy. I'm not picking on them, but I'm just saying that's another piece.
Yeah, maybe you can help me with that.
Well, I'm just,
that would be great.
It's an interesting piece of the kind of unifying people from all different walks of life around some good choices.
Yeah, I think so, and I think if you can be honest about what are the energy sources that are going to help meet this demand, and there's a variety, right? Nuclear is going to play a role, natural gas will play a role, solar will play a role. That certainly makes sense in certain parts of the country. There is a place where things will make sense, where the economics of it, will be enough to drive, and we won't have to continue to use subsidies to help support it at this time. And the only way we can do that is if we're not going to make oil and gas the bad guy or solar the winner, right? It's how do we treat all of these sources in a way to set them up for success economically. And when we can do that and be honest about it, then we can solve this right away. I mean, you had President Trump, I think yesterday, or incoming, soon to be, talking about a $20 billion investment coming to the U.S., and they had identified 4 or 5 states in that. Oklahoma was one of them that was investing in more data centers. What we're not talking about on the backside is how we're going to power those data centers, and what that's going to look like. And those are, the important parts of the conversation that are missing, that I think if we could be more outspoken in a positive way about what natural gas could do to help with that, it's important. And if we could start to put that in the rhetoric, right? Even COP 28, it actually made it into the document, that natural gas can be a clean burning, bridge fuel. That was huge.
Then we can just move to debating the length of the bridge, but at least that's progress.
But at least it's in there, and at least you're getting, underdeveloped nations that are relying heavily on those international development dollars to be able to improve what's happening in their countries. They're open to what's the best solution for them in regard to their energy sources, and not what's being forced to them by big EU dollars, by big Asian Development Bank dollars, like really being thoughtful about this is what could make the most sense for these people in this part of the world. And we've got to keep that language in there. We need a big tech company, one of them, any of them, right? We need a Google, we need a Microsoft, we need an Elon Musk, we need someone coming out, Jeff Bezos, saying this is one of our solutions to how we are going to solve for this. So we just need one of them. So I think we could all probably try to work on that, and I think that starts to change people's mindsets.
You mentioned you were starting to touch on Africa and the developing world, and just the developing world's need for energy. Is something that it's just impressed on so many of us. Do you see the Hamm Institute getting involved in trying to promote better growth-oriented energy policies in the developing world? Could that be part of your?
Yes, I would hope so. We've seen what I call irresponsible policy making, and that's what happened to Africa, and that's why you got the investments you got into Africa in regard to infrastructure from countries like China. And because
like the World Bank, IMF, the West starts pulling back from making traditional energy investments, and the Chinese fill the void.
Yeah, when they say we're not going to allow drilling here, we're not going to allow, we're not going to allow these certain things and be able to use these, billion-dollar projects to be able to do that in places like Africa immediately. We're going to pull out. So yeah, I think, Asia's an example of where we're putting our effort right now. But I think as we grow as an institute and we start to lean into other universities and other industry partners, I think it'd be smart for us to say, okay, you take this, you take that, you take this, and how do we make sure there's responsible policy happening around the tables when we are at Paris 15, when we're at the next COP? Like, how do we get that voice more balanced? And we're getting there here in the U.S. I think everybody feels that it's getting better. But globally, we have a lot of work to do.
When you think about this, that was a perfect place to segue, because you said globally we have a lot of work to do. You must have so many possible things you could do in any given day. Like, I could promote this, I could talk to these guys, I could go see this, we could go. Like, how do you think you'll narrow the to-do list or the pecking order around here of just everything you could get involved with?
Listen, I mean, you have the same, right? We all have that challenge every day, right? What's the fire, number one, that you got to put out? But more importantly, what are you thinking about in the future? Like, I'm always having to remind myself to have a futurist mentality, because it's really easy to try to solve for today, and then we're not planning appropriately. And so, when the Asia trip's the trip with the governor's a great example. When we're in the room talking about how to move the needle from the country of Japan buying, right now 10% of their LNG is coming from the U.S. and talking to them in a very realistic way. How do we grow that from 10 to 25%? That's a big number.
And they're still buying, I wish I knew the number off the top of my head, they're still buying a fair amount from Russia.
Yes. Yeah, majority. So I want to verify that, but I'm pretty sure right now they're in an old existing contract that is requiring that. But to me, that's where you spend your time, right? You've really got to figure out, how can we move the needle? I've got to make sure we have a seat at that table, because if we can't be a part of how they're getting their supply, then we can't be a part of the solution, right? You've got to have some skin in the game. Our current administration isn't going to probably want or allow, and I agree with him, for us to be at that table if they're not even buying our products, right? So there's just the classic common sense approach to, let's first make sure we're doing what we need to be doing and at the table. And so, I'll continue to prioritize those things. Right now, we're in such a geopolitical, volatile environment around the world. I think we'll stay right now in the lane of trying to help stabilize that through energy and through more U.S. energy going to the rest of the world. If it doesn't fit in that lane, it probably won't rise to the top right now. But I get excited about the future. I get excited about what technologies are out there. How do we do better as oil and gas producers? Where can we grow? What's the latest and greatest technology? I'm so excited about geothermal and nuclear and those types of energy sources that I think can help really fill the whole picture and paint one of stability and economic growth for the rest of the world. And, those things take capital and time and investment, and industry needs to believe in that and need to rely a little less on the big public dollar to make those things happen. Those are things on my wish list I would love to, continue working on if we didn't have so much geopolitical volatility.
Do you, I love the idea that, like when you said wading in and trying to stabilize things, it just seems like for many, many years now, we've been living in a period of more volatility for whatever reason. I was just thinking, though, when you were talking a lot of your answers, you were at TCU. That was going great. I used to attend fantastic things there. What kind of led you to think this would be a good time for me to come to Hamm and kind of do it again, but maybe do it in a different way? Like, what was your own personal career thoughts around making this change?
I think in my heart of hearts, I'm a closet, geopolitical junkie. I get really excited about trying to help put those pieces together and come at things from more of a business perspective than anything. And I truly do believe that if it's an economically viable solution, that is something that should drive policy and thus drive how much money we have in our pockets. And thus,
well, said another way, let's don't embrace solutions that don't make economic sense. They can't last.
Yes, and I think the rest of the world needs to hear that more. So I think, the Hamm Institute has an influence that is subtle, it's quiet, it's proven. When you take someone like Mr. Hamm and what he has built in his 50-year career, I mean, I interviewed him on stage at a TCU Energy Symposium last year, And that's kind of when it clicked for me. And getting to know him a little, I've known him for years, but just getting to know him a little better and what his vision is. He has the most altruistic vision of how energy makes everybody's life better. And he's not just spouting it. He lived it. He made it happen. He took the risk to make that happen. He got involved in every single administration, every single presidential administration he's been involved in, and tried to have influence. He's, for as political as he might seem, he is very apolitical. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing to witness.
The export ban that was on Obama's watch when he was part of helping get that removed.
Classic example.
Yeah.
So it's a platform at this moment in time in the trajectory of our country and the current administration. The stars are aligning in a way where I think this institute and Mr. Hamm and Oklahoma and the U.S. Can really, really start to shift and change the dialogue around the gift of our natural resources and what that means for the rest of the world. And that was my biggest incentive for kind of moving this way. I felt like there was more range and more opportunity to have more of have a voice at the geopolitical table.
It is really interesting when you think about the institutes or think tanks, various organizations around the world. It's hard to think of one, it just struck me as you were describing it, it's hard to think of one where there is an individual who was a part of its founding and who has as much, has significant personal reach that they can bring to the Institute. That's very different. Maybe James Baker at Rice was similar to that, but it's just a very unique feature of the organization.
I agree, and it's a narrow lane, which is nice too. That's always exciting to be a part of. When you can stay narrowly focused, you're able to probably do a little more than when you're trying to answer to everybody, like most institutes do around the country. The TCU Energy Institute, Ralph Lowe, has a similar family tie to it with a wildcatter from West Texas, and Mary Ralph's a legend in her own sort and a personal friend of mine. I think the world of her. It's just a little bit smaller scale, and they are growing in that way. And I'm I hope that I was able to set them up for a platform that they can continue to grow from as well. I still stay on that board and stay involved with their work there. And honestly, there's a lot of complementary places that the Ralph Lowe Energy Institute could help with the Hamm, and that the Hamm could help with Ralph Lowe. When you've got two energy institutes that aren't afraid to say oil and gas is a good thing. Yeah. Right? And both of these are doing that. And everybody else dances around it. And if it's the flavor of the day, they're going towards it. And if it's not the next administration, they shift and they follow the big global public dollar. And, they kind of after the shiniest object a lot of time. And these two are unique in that way.
That's really a kind of fascinating concept. Can you imagine, getting together, 15 institutes globally, all in the same room to talk about what's everybody doing, what's everybody thinking, what's everybody analyzing? Are there some unique potential, I don't know if you have to have a meeting like that, but partnerships you can have with other think organizations that can aid in all this? I think so, yeah. And that's a great challenge. We should do that. I think there are some little pockets of that happening, but probably not all of them. Take the 15 or 20, most unique in what they're known for, right? And have a table, a room with tables that you've got unique voices in each of their areas and really think through that. So number one, we're not, recreating anything unnecessarily, but really try to collaborate on more things. And I bet there's more things we have in common than we don't. Yes. And that's an important thing I think we forget. And that reminds us of it when you've got to make an effort, though, to put those people in the room. I'll end on one last thing. You said to me that I was very struck by it. It reminded me of Altuve in Houston. There was this quote. He said something like, after he had success, this reporter said, are you glad to be showing your success to the people who doubted you? And he said, forget the doubters. I'm glad to show my success to the people who supported me. And we were talking about, gosh, we should go to Germany and try to help them fix their energy problems because, And you said, yeah, we could do that. Or we could go to some of these other countries that are making some great choices and say, great job, we're with you. Let's add momentum to the people who have the momentum instead of
we can't be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
And so I
just thought it was a great observation.
I love that. Like, let's elevate,
Yeah, let's raise up the folks who are getting it right.
I agree.
Not to take anything away from maybe changing some German opinion on some stuff. But I thought it was a great quote. It kind of captured your spirit, I thought.
Oh, thank you, Maynard. That's good to hear. And I've been an educator my whole life. I've been working in and out of higher ed. And even when I wasn't in higher ed, I was still teaching ad hoc. And I'm a big believer in what can be done with the positive power of just basic discipline and actions around making sure we're celebrating the wins.
Yeah.
And what happens when you can set a positive example for others to follow. It's such a stronger message than us telling you what to do.
Or telling you what's wrong as opposed to saying, let's go this way.
Yeah, or just look at this.
Yeah.
This worked.
Do you think, I know you know the new administration well, Chris Wright, Doug Burgum, the community, I'd say we're extremely positive at Veritan on Doug and Chris and how they think and how they talk, but any thoughts from you on what we'll see from them or the messaging or the positivity or the vision or any of that?
I mean, I love both of those names you just mentioned. I love that they're proven business people in the world.
Yeah.
That's a different perspective.
Yes.
It's not a typical political appointment. And so I think when you bring a realistic mindset of here's how this can work, and I've had to answer to investors, and I've had to, be unbelievably innovative in my organization. I've had to do all these things. So now how do I take that and overlay it on top of a government system? Yeah. And so I get I'm so excited about those two. The whole cabinet's amazing. I've got an older sister that will be, hopefully in the next week or so in listed as the Secretary of Agriculture. And so, I'm close to these folks. I'm excited about it. I think there's a lot of misinformation about how they're going to lead, and that they're going to leave people behind that don't necessarily align with their way of thinking. And just those three alone, I would say, just from personal experience, they are the ones that want to bring you with them, and they will make decisions that will enable that to happen and not keep it from happening.
Okay, last question. I can't help myself. The Doge initiative. This is very unique. Right, and everybody knows, there's got to be, when Elon Musk said that $2 trillion number at Madison Square Garden as an estimate of what...
I was there.
Were you?
I was there at the garden.
So that's a big target. What do you make of that, how Washington will either embrace it or not embrace it? Does it have a chance? Dare to dream. How could Doge affect a lot of the things that we're talking about? Do you think it could work?
I think there will, yes, I do. I think it's going to make people wake up and look and listen more than anything, and really start to identify the parts of government that are effective and are efficient, and where we are getting the most return on our tax dollar investment, which is key and every American should care about, Those two gentlemen are going to force us at least to think about it and look at it and call attention to it. Yeah. That's step one, right? Yeah. Educating yourself. Yeah. And so many of us have gone so long as this budget has just creeped, and we aren't necessarily seeing the benefit of that, right? And so why is that? And so to get maybe half of America that didn't even support this new administration to even say, well, what is he talking about? Well, what does that mean? That's when we use media for the good, right? They get such a bad rap, but if we can use that to get information out that's accurate and put light on the things that are not working in the U.S. government that need to be cleaned up in some way, shape, or form, that's what will come from that department. And I'm excited about it. I mean, it's going to be a ride and fun to watch, and we've never seen
it's disruptive, and
anything
the
like it.
Questions need to be asked.
Yeah, they do. Wow. So I think good will come from it. I really do. I don't know if we'll meet that big goal, that big number, but even if we started to even chip away at it, that's better than never having chipped and continuing to grow that number.
Yeah. Well, I hope everyone who's watched this gets our message, which as I say, from our dealings with you, we're so excited about our conversations, about what you're doing here, about the way you think, and we're really looking forward to being helpful. And we wanted our friends to meet you, honestly, and understand what's going on and what you're trying to do, so that they'll reach out and get to know you better. It's just been so fun, and I know it's going to get more fun.
Thank you, Maynard. I sure appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.